If you move to the next slide, thank you. So today we'll be talking about the upcoming cleanup at Zone 1, modified Zone 1, which includes the former West Calumet housing complex. And so there will be a couple of presentations. The first one will be from EPA, and the second one will be from IDA, the developer. And after both presentations, we will have a Q&A. So presentation, then a presentation, and then the question and answer period. If you have any questions, please hold them until the Q&A session. When that session starts, just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you. And we have a court report right here. It's going to be transcribing this meeting. The meeting will be available at the USS Lead website from EPA. The website address is right here. And the website address is also available in the fact sheets on the front desk. And we will have a slide at the end with the URL for our website. So I'm going to turn it over to Thomas Alcamo, Remedial Project Manager from US EPA Region 5.
We'll get this technology work. Hey everybody, how you doing? So we're here tonight to talk about the Zone 1 cleanup. It should be starting later this summer. Just to give you an overview of Zone 1, so that this laser pointer to work. Here's Zone 1 right there. There's Zone 2, Zone 3. Zones 2 and 3 have been cleaned up already. Zone 1 is where the former West Calumet housing complex was. We split that site into 3 different zones. We call it operable units, or you can think of that as a phase of the project. We also have a second phase of this project called operable unit 2 or phase 2, which is a groundwater investment. 2018 and was completed in the fall of 2018. Due to the closure of the housing complex, EPA was required, and subsequent demolition, EPA was required to reevaluate the remedy. We had an initial remedy in 2012, but because this was demolished, we had to relook at the site remedy. So in the meantime, we started hearing or getting information from the city of East Chicago that they were in discussions with developers for the redevelopment of Zone 1. And that redevelopment would be associated with commercial redevelopment. And that's one thing I wanted to just mention too in regard to land use. EPA really, the owner of the actual property determines the land use. EPA does not determine the land use. We basically do a cleanup based upon what that land use is. So again, going over some timeline, we ended up doing a new remedy decision. We call that a record of decision. And we did that in March of 20. And basically it was a residential cleanup, but we also had a contingency in there because we were getting all these signals from the city that they were looking to redevelop this Zone 1 property as light industrial, really light commercial. We essentially put a contingency in our decision document, and if 2 things happened, we would then implement that contingency, which would then put it as a commercial remedy. Number 1 is the city would have to change the zoning of Zone 1 to commercial. And number 2 is a developer would have to buy the property. Okay? And so back in May of 2020, the city council approved the change in zoning. And then basically in August of 22, HUD basically transferred the property and allowed the developer, industrial development advantage to buy the property. So in any case, the property was transferred to, I'm just going to use IDA as a shortcut. And so what happened is IDA bought the property and the zoning changed. Therefore, we were going to implement this commercial remedy, which is different than a residential remedy. Okay? So a commercial remedy, we look at 800 parts per million lead, 26 parts per million arsenic, and that's excavated at the top 1 foot. Okay? In this case, there was also an agreement, and I'll talk to you a little bit more in detail about it, something called a prospective purchaser agreement, which is really an agreement between EPA and the developer to do the cleanup, but also then subsequently build a logistics center warehouse over the Zone 1 property. And basically I think we came out here in May of last year and did a public meeting and took public comments for the prospective purchaser agreement. Also for our something we call the explanation of significant differences, which is just finalizes the remedy. And we took public comments on that, answered those public comments, and then IDA basically purchased the property, or finally purchased it in September of 22. And then we signed our explanation of significant differences in September of 22. So that really started the actual design work for the site. So again, just kind of reiterate, the prospective purchaser agreement is a legal agreement that is between EPA and IDA, the developer. What it calls for is IDA is going to actually be doing the cleanup, all right? And then subsequent to that, there's going to be a logistics center built on that, or a warehouse built over the property, okay? As part of that agreement, they're required to meet all EPA requirements for the cleanup. In addition, we ended up doing another agreement at the same time, so that's why there was a little bit of delay getting going on this project, because we had a large amount of negotiation to do. We did something called an administrative settlement agreement and order on consent, and it's just another fancy name for a legal agreement. That's between us, EPA, and the responsible parties. One of the main things associated with that is in that the responsible parties have to provide us a bond for $13.5 million. So, for example, if IDA ends up going bankrupt and does not finish the cleanup, we will get that money to finish the cleanup. And we do that in a large number of our settlements to make sure that we basically can get the cleanup done. And again, the responsible parties are doing that, not the developer. We also are getting paid our oversight costs. One of the things that is going to be happening, we'll talk a little bit more about that, is EPA is going to be on this site full-time during the cleanup, just like we did in the demolition. So we're going to get compensated for our cost associated with that. So we know how important it is. We need to get this cleanup done appropriately and get it done right. And so again, EPA will be on site full-time during this actual cleanup activities. IDA has hired an engineering firm called Verdantis. And maybe Dave, if you want to kind of raise your hand, Dave. And Dave is their project manager, who I work closely with. And basically they've been hired to do the design, to obtain the cleanup construction contractor, and also basically do construction oversight for IDA. So Verdantis will be on there looking at the work that's being done to ensure it's being done appropriately, but also EPA will be on there overseeing all that work. So back in March of 2020, we decided to go out and do some additional sampling in Zone 1 to really look and see what's in the top foot of that site. So we did a pretty detailed sampling event. You can see you can see these grid areas. They're about 1 acre in size. We broke the site up into a number of these grids and basically sampled that in a specific way and looked at the statistics. And I don't want to get too technical here, but what we tried to do is look at how the soil samples, how they were different or variable, okay? And what we do with that is we do statistics on that, and so we basically took sampling that we had 3 sample points very close to each other, looked at that, how different they were, and then did statistics on it, and we used that to be 95% confident we would meet the 800 parts per million cleanup number and the 26 parts per million cleanup number. So what we determined based on this variability, that we're going to be excavating at 787 parts per million lead, so we're lowering it, and 19 parts per million arsenic, to make sure we're 95% confident that we're going to meet these cleanup numbers. So we did the sophisticated sampling in 2020. One of the things they also did on this project is they did additional sampling on these grids to look at the disposal of these soils. And if there's a specific test that is done that evaluates the leaching of the soil if it went into a landfill. And they did that on all the grids and essentially came up with, on the next slide, that we're going to have to actually stabilize some of this soil material before it can get put into a landfill. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So this kind of gives you a general idea of what we discovered and what we're going to be doing with an excavation in a kind of picture. The green here, these are grids that are less than 787 and 19 arsenic, and they don't need to be excavated. The light brown ones are basically just has to be excavated. That soil does not need to be stabilized. The red are grids that have to be stabilized, okay? And we have to we have to stabilize this material before it can be sent off to a landfill that's, we call it a non-hazardous landfill. And then we have a couple grids where we have to stabilize but not excavate. So again, this was based on our detailed sampling event. This is basically what we're going to be doing on the site. So what is stabilization? You kind of can almost think of it as taking the soil and mixing it with concrete. This isn't concrete, but that's an easy way to think about it. This is done, we call this in situ, or in place. You can see this piece of equipment here is like a massive rototiller. And they put the stabilizing agent in there and they rototill that into the soil to make sure that when this goes to a landfill, that it won't leach. And so this will happen. We don't know the means and methods yet, but it will be done in place. But this is just an example of the type of equipment we use to basically till, as I said, it's kind of a big garden tiller, till this stabilizing agent into the soil. And again, we have to do that because if we don't do that, this material has to go to a hazardous waste landfill. And we're taking the material, the non-hazardous material, is all going to Republic Newton County landfill in Brook, Indiana. The landfill is also going to require, I think, every 1,600 cubic yards of material to resample to make sure that it can be disposed of there. So there's these whole procedures in place just to make sure that we can take this material from zone 1 to this landfill. Yes?
You're talking about stabilizing the soil.
Correct.
And taking out?
Yes, then it gets dug out. Now, sometimes you can do this, they call it ex situ, or out of place. What they do is they dig it up and put it in this big mixer and add the stabilizing agent in this mixer and then take it off site. In this case, we think it's better to do in place because there's less chance for dust generation. So, cleanup. Let's talk a little bit about numbers. So we're looking at zone 1 and a little over 100,000 tons of contaminated soil is going to be taken off the site and disposed of in that Newton County landfill. About 40,000 cubic yards of that is going to need to be stabilized versus a total of 71,000 cubic yards. I just converted it to tons just to kind of make it easy. One of the things is we're going to be excavating that 1 foot. Then they're going to need to put a visible barrier down. That'll be an orange barrier. And then they will bring in residential standard soil and put that over and replace the stuff we removed with this residential standard soil. And so there's a whole series of sampling procedures. They've not identified quite yet their off-site fill, but there's sampling procedures that have to be met for this to ensure that they bring appropriate soil. We're not bringing contaminated soil back onto the site. A couple things, we know how important it is to make sure that we don't spread material from the site. So there's going to be a truck washing station. This was one that was used during the demolition. There also is going to be a street sweeper. And also we'll be being very careful in terms of only traffic will be going out onto 151st Street. So our truck route is going to essentially be going 151st Street to Railroad to Chicago Avenue. So we're trying to avoid as much as possible any type of residential area. And the gate only on 151st Street is going to be used. So again, they'll be turning right out of the site. Also, what we're going to be doing on site is air monitoring. We're going to have 4 air monitors on site. We're going to do both for dust and we'll be sending off samples to the laboratory. These air monitors, there's going to be 1 upwind, 1 downwind, and then 2 near the excavation. And what they do is there's a device in there that measures dust real time. And we set that at a conservative level, and that alarms if the dust gets greater than a number. We've set this a very conservative number of 68 parts per billion. Don't want to go into that with you, but in any case, there's a number that's been set that's very conservative. So when that alarm goes off, we know that they need to add additional engineering controls like additional wetting, additional dust suppressants, or whatever they have to do to make sure that this isn't getting spread to the neighborhood. But in addition, there's samples that are going to be going off to the laboratory for arsenic and lead sampling, and we've got action levels set up for that to be able to evaluate that over time to make sure that we're not influencing or affecting not only the workers, but also the nearby community. Again, EPA will be there full-time. Rachel, could you stand up? This is Rachel Hool, and Rachel's with a company called Tetra Tech. Her team will be on the site full-time. She was actually involved in the demolition, during the demolition phase, but she'll be actually on site being EPA's eyes and ears and making sure that the dust is controlled, that they excavate it properly, and document all the cleanup. So again, full-time during all cleanup activity. So, again, Charles mentioned there's a lot of plans. I think there's 13 or 14 plans on the EPA website. You don't need to copy. You can just search Google, search USS Lead EPA website, and then go to the section called Technical Documents. And there's a bunch of technical documents there that we've essentially approved that'll give much more detail in terms of the cleanup. You can see all of them. There's a couple more that we have to get approved yet, mainly associated with laboratory analysis, but we're getting very near on those. Right now, the schedule is looking to begin sometime in July of this year. The thing is there's still a lot of things that have to come together before we meet that schedule. They need to get a construction firm. There's a number of evaluations for fill material, all those kind of things still need to be done before they can actually begin work. We expect this work, if it starts in July, we expect this work to go through the year. And by the end of, sometime in December, we expect to be done. And then they're going to essentially have to do erosion control after that. Usually it may get extended into next year, seeding to make sure that there's basically dust isn't blowing off and things like that. So there's some things we may have to do if this gets completed outside of, the growing season. But after that is done, then the actual logistics center warehouse starts. Okay? What we've been told, and Steve can talk, Steve Riddell from IDA will be coming up here to talk a little bit about his project. Essentially, they're going to be bringing in addition to our 1 foot of soil that meets residential standards, they're going to be bringing in fill material that's going to raise the elevation even 4 feet higher. So the building then will be put on top of that. So the good thing with that is they will not need to dig into any contaminated material during the construction of the building. Okay? So, and again, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, we did something called a 5-year review. Every 5 years, EPA needs to reevaluate these sites. So this isn't a walk away for EPA. We'll be back every 5 years looking at the site to make sure that this remedy that's been implemented not only here in Zone 1, but Zones 2 and 3 remain protective. I think that's it. So Steve? Here's that.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back. Been back a lot this year. Excited to get moving with this project. It's been a while to get to where we are today, that's for sure. I guess I'll pick up where Tom left off. Well, I'm Steve Riddell with Industrial Development Advantage. guess I'm waiting for somebody to click and I'm the guy that's doing it, right? So it's a quick overview of our company. What our focus has always been is repositioning and redeveloping impacted properties that are contaminated. My partner and I have a skill set in doing that for 25 years, and we brought that to IDA when we started the company and built our team around it. A lot of our team are folks that we've worked with in other capacities, other businesses before IDA. But we love finding properties that have issues, figuring out solutions. Sometimes you got to think outside the box, be creative, and then repositioning them for development. So that's our skill set. We also get involved in projects where we take over the cleanup and closure of those projects. Sometimes those can be redeveloped, sometimes they cannot. So just to kind of give you a background of who we are. You know the story, or some of you do, or we got involved in this process with the city years ago, and through an RFP process with other entities, we were fortunately selected to be the developer, and then we had that slog of a couple years working with the PRPs to hammer out a deal to take the site over. So, as Tom mentioned, we were able to acquire the site last September. And so September 2022 is when we finally owned the property. And once that day, once we closed on the property, our focus was first and foremost getting the remediation kicked off. And that's where Dave and his team, we worked closely with them for many months before that. But once we owned the property, in fact, we did a number of things in advance of closure because we anticipated closing, and we wanted to get a leg up on a lot of the reports that we have to do. As Tom mentioned, there's a lot of reports. He went through them. There's a lot of work plans associated with everything that we do out here that have to be approved. So 2022, September through the end of last year and into this year, that's been our sole focus. What we've also done, getting ahead of myself, I guess, what we also did around January of this year is we hired a design engineer, a civil engineering company, to start working on our development designs, because we want to be able to go to development once we get through remediation at the end of this year. To do that, we have to have a well thought out, understood, engineered understanding of the site, utilities, anything and everything associated with putting a building up. That's stormwater, water, sewer, gas, electric. So there's a lot of detail that goes hand in hand with that. Our team's going to be working closely with the city through this summer and into the fall to get city approvals and necessary buy-ins on our utility plans and all of our site development plans. So that work's ongoing right now. The focus of our development is, at the end of the day, a logistics hub, and we're targeting, I don't know why I'm looking backwards, I can't see it anyway. So we're targeting about an 850,000 square foot logistics center on the site. Tom mentioned, we're raising the grade of the site to minimize any future utility excavations in the contaminated material from the prior slag operations. We've been able to balance that pretty good. There might be a little bit that has to be managed, but we really try to get as much of the utilities out of that contaminated material as possible. And I think our engineers have come up with this as a design to do that. So that's our focus from a design standpoint. From a building standpoint, that design will culminate in about an 850,000 square foot logistics campus. Depending on the ultimate end user, we think that'll generate 400 to 900 full-time jobs, and there's a variety of those jobs. What they will be. It's really the end user drives everything, but it's anything from forklift operators to truck drivers to computer engineers to logistics engineers, managers, etc. So pretty exciting, a whole gamut of employment opportunities, and we're excited to be pushing that forward. Plus, these projects always bring a catalyst to the area too, so that's where the multiplier effect comes in. So our design is based on this is a conceptual design, better renderings will follow, but you can see this 850,000, we put the biggest building that would fit on the site and allow for adequate parking and movement of trucks around the campus. So, and what you're looking at ultimately is a concrete and asphalt covering the old waste that was placed here from the prior days, but in the form of a productive building that's a job generator. This is a peek inside what some of these warehouses look like. They're never that quiet. They're always active on the inside, moving packages around. That's a typical rendering of an outside of one of these facilities. End user drafts a lot of these things, and obviously everything's going to be built in conformance with city code and city requirements. You know, one of the things we really want to do, and it's real important with any development in our view, but especially these kind of campuses, is making sure we're networked with the local community training centers. And to us, this is one of the main focal points of our development. You know, it's one thing to reposition the site, get it ready, and go vertical. It's another thing to have a workforce in the area that can work there. And that's a big focus of ours. We're going to be working closely with the city and regional resources to make sure that you know, there's opportunities for people here, and you know, it benefits us and it benefits the community. It makes the community stronger, it makes our development stronger. It's a no-brainer to us, and that's one of the exciting things about this development to our team. We keep an alliance, you know, in touch with the Ministry Alliance and others, and we're going to continue. Now that we're, you know, not in the, you know, we were paddling water stage until September of 2022. Now we're swimming, and so as we're swimming, we're going to continue the network and outreach with as many institutions and networks in the region to you know, to build our network, to get the training aspects moving, and any other networking that makes sense from a regional standpoint. I could talk forever here. I guess that's the end of my presentation. I guess we can get into questions now, Tom. Oh, sorry. Yeah, good.
Is this on? No, okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna open it to questions and answers. There was a lot of information, so I imagine there are some questions out there. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone. So Cisco and Kaylee here will bring you a microphone. Tom and Steve will be here to answer questions. So, any questions? Raise your hand. Oh, gentlemen.
First of all, mine is not a question. I'm the councilman of this district, re-elected councilman of this district. And I've been working with these guys for the last 3 years, and I'd like to thank the president, Monica, for helping me to get the zoning changed so that we have industrial and taking it away from residential. And I'm excited. Like I say, 3 years I've been waiting on this to happen, right? You know, and I wish the best for this community. However, I got some information from one of my residents out there. However, she wasn't able to be here. Some of the things that she asked. Is Charles here?
I'm here.
Okay, you got some information from Miss Marissa Lopez, correct?
Yes, she emailed me a couple of questions, so we're gonna be responding to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can address that if you want. I mean,
No, I heard some of it already. Only one thing I didn't hear is how you're gonna, when you fence it around, you're gonna have that protective area around our fence, which some of the stuff won't leak into my community.
Exactly. I think that's obviously a top priority of us. Just like when we did the demolition, trying to control the dust. If this is done appropriately, there's going to be no issues, and we're going to make sure it's done appropriately.
And I live here in the community, and I'm always watching. So
we'd love you to come to the site.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
So you know, I'm just glad that we're now moving forward with this, and it's going to make our district a whole lot better than it has been in the past. And under my leadership, that's what I want. Just like Monica's doing a great job in her area, she has one of those over there as well. And we're going to move forward and work together for the next 4 years. We're doing what we need to do. She supports me, and I'm going to support her. So thank you for that, and I'm looking forward to the first truck to come up out of there. Thank you. I believe, but we have a council meeting.
Thank you for attending, and thank you for your comment. Next question.
We have a question over here.
I do have a question.
Do you want me to?
Mike.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Steve Segura. I work for the city of Chicago.
You gotta say your name louder.
Steve Segura for the city of Chicago. This truck washing station, what happens to the water that runs off into the water table?
Well, it'd be controlled. The water would be controlled, and so it hasn't been designed. I mean, there's many different kinds of it. We haven't seen exactly what it is, but we certainly have a stormwater pollution prevention plan that was reviewed by the city that makes sure that the runoff doesn't go outside or into the sewers. And that's been approved, correct? Dave, that's been approved, yeah, it's been approved.
Thank you for your question. Next question.
Joe?
What I've seen on Kennedy Avenue, this project on DuPont,
Mhm.
and talking about the dust that brought into the roadway on Kennedy Avenue, it's not very ideal
Okay.
what we see out there right now. I don't know whether they have a wash station or not, but are you going to duplicate that, or are you going to improve on what they're doing on Kennedy right now?
Well, we're gonna have a street sweeper, okay? I mean, we basically are gonna have, as I said, EPA is gonna have full-time oversight. We know the problems with truck traffic can have, and we're gonna keep it down, the dust down. I can't talk what's going on Kennedy, but certainly there's gonna be a street sweeper, truck washing station, and we're gonna have inspections every day, ensuring that those trucks, not only that, leaving the site, aren't carrying stuff out either, so. That's kind of what we tried to do.
I see
with the
that you are
demolition.
going out 151st. Right?
Correct.
And what is the preferred route of the trucks actually going out of the city?
My
Do you have one? Do you have one yet?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Thanks for the question. We're gonna go right, trucks will go right on 151st out of the site, right on Railroad, right on Chicago, out to the highway.
So it's going to be Chicago Avenue, the exit.
Yes.
It's going to be pretty obvious to the residents if the monitoring and the dust suppression is not being done properly.
It'll be obvious to us. We'll be the first ones to notice it and rectify if there's an issue. So dust control and street cleaning and sweeping and really keeping the dust on site. That's our number one focus and priority here. So
Yeah, because we're already seeing some not a good approach on Kennedy Avenue. I mean,
I don't know what they're doing there, but
Yes,
what I do know, what
understand.
we're gonna do is, as Tom mentioned, truck wash, dust control, and as necessary, street sweep. It'll be on call and ready to go. And I'll be working with my team and impressing that upon them, and Tom will be impressing that upon me. So I think we have the checks in place to make sure that what I'm telling you is carried out, and certainly that's our focus.
I think one other thing with the truck route too is we certainly want to avoid residential and we want to stay away from all the truck traffic on Kennedy too. So that's why we have this route to basically alleviate some of the, obviously, a lot of truck traffic that's going to happen here.
From our experience at Kennedy Avenue, I'm pretty sure you will be monitored pretty
Yep.
closely.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's all I have on that part of it now. Some questions about new development and job training, that will come later probably. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and we got a question in the back.
Okay. I'd like to ask IGA, I think, were you aware that you could have had a better cleanup if you were stuck with residential and then had it cleaned out and then went commercial? Was that even possible? Because I think with
Not when we got
residential,
involved.
you have more stuff moved out, and they would have went deeper. Then you could have had to redevelop, rezone over to commercial. I think that would have worked. I'm not sure, but I think that would have, yes or no?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's after we got involved when it was, the remedial options.
Were you aware of that you could have got a better cleanup out of that spot, if you would have kept residential, then rezoned later?
I was aware of all the different,
Okay,
cleanup
I could be
requirements.
wrong, but I think that's how it works. Okay. Yeah, okay. Mr. Ackerman, can I have a few minutes of your time?
Sure, please.
All right. I don't know if you went over this or not, but I'd like to ask some questions about the ad monitor, because I can't hear real good back here.
Okay, go
Could
ahead.
we repeat?
Okay, there's going to be 4 air monitors.
Okay, I asked the question, then
Okay.
I don't have to bother you no more.
Okay, cool. Good.
Wait, you're gonna air monitor for arsenic and lead, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it gonna be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there?
No, it won't be monitored 24, it'll be operating during the actual
Only during
excavation activities.
Only
And
during
then the
excavation.
site will be shut down for the night, and then air monitoring starts the next morning. So there will be dust suppressants and things like that added at night to ensure that excavations aren't blowing material and stuff like that.
Okay, okay. Now, how high above the ground these monitors, monitor stuff? How high up in the air? I can't see that.
I'm gonna back up here,
Okay, yeah, sure.
right there. There's a picture of an air monitor, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see that.
So there'll be 4 of those. There's gonna be one upwind where we wanna see what's coming from off-site. There'll be one downwind, and then 2 by the excavations, okay? And if there's additional activities that are happening in multiple locations on the site, then there's gonna be additional air monitors placed. So right now, we're assuming that it's just gonna be one excavation, but if something goes where they're doing something else, maybe they're stabilizing soils over here and they're excavating over there, then we will bring in additional air monitors. And those air monitors are real time, and they have an alarm on them, and we set that alarm to a very low level for dust, total dust. And then if we get greater than that number, the monitor reads, then an alarm goes off, and we know, not from a health standpoint, it isn't causing an unacceptable risk. What it's doing is telling us we need to basically improve the dust control. There are many things, engineering controls, we can implement to do that. And maybe it's going to be too windy of a day that they can't excavate that day. So there's a number of things that we normally do in these type of cleanups, similar to what we did air monitoring during the cleanup in zones 2 and zones 3 at the homes.
You have fencing around the property already, right?
Yes, there's fencing, the fencing is enclosed with one gate on 151st Street.
Now that fencing, would you need any kind of additional signs put up since you started excavating on there, like they did at DuPont?
We can do that, we haven't talked about that, but if that's necessary, we'll do it. Certainly, I think we need to put some signs out on 151st Street about truck traffic. I think that probably is a good idea. I've done that at other sites, and so we can put signs up. We just haven't got that far into, the construction firm hasn't been
Okay.
hired yet, but
One
it's
more
something that we
question.
can do.
Just one more.
Sure.
Okay, now, as far as security around the fence, how you gonna secure it 24/7, so nobody goes in there?
There's a locked gate, okay? It's only one entrance with a locked gate. And if we start seeing trespassing or something like that, I think we're gonna go to IDA and say we're gonna need to have some nighttime security.
Yeah.
But right now, that's not planned.
I think at DuPont, they got video cameras on the fence, I think so.
Yeah, but that's a good idea, we may do that.
Yeah, because it's very important, and they have barbed wire, you don't want no kids going in there.
Exactly. Particularly when we're excavating, even though these aren't deep excavations, it certainly brings inquisitive kids on and see what's going on.
Yeah, because I go there myself as a kid.
Well, thank you for your question. Next question, please raise your hand. Okay, we've got a couple questions. Gentleman first, and then in the back. Thank you.
My name is Thomas Davis, and I don't live in the area, but I have relatives that do. Now, during the oversight and doing the monitoring and all of that, and I know they like to cook outside when it's warm. Now, but if it's windy, would it be good to suggest to them that don't do any outside
They
activity?
can cook all they want, we're looking for dust, okay? Initially, the stuff, when you're cooking, that's a different type of odor and different, it's not really a dust that's gonna ever affect us, okay? So there is no limitations for barbecue, and hopefully they barbecue all summer.
Okay, one more question. And the area from McCook over to Kennedy Avenue for the resident, at any given day, it is down to the level that everything is okay in those areas now?
Yeah, there's no issues now. I mean, I think when we start excavating, that's when we really have to start monitoring, because it's obviously we're picking up the soil with backhoes and putting it in trucks. And so that's where we basically are concerned, but otherwise, there's no issues right now. The site is, there's grass on it, or basically gravel over the site, so it's really controlled right now. But once we get going in this excavation, there's gonna be open areas that we have to monitor.
Okay, that's kind of what I need. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the question I want to ask is this, I'm a lifetime resident of this area. As a matter of fact, I live on the front end of Cook, and from my backyard, I can see the former entrance to the former West Calumet complex. Now, this is my question: does it feel separation between my house and West Calumet? Now, this dust that we're talking about, is it possible that somebody could link up? Now, I know you have, dust monitoring devices which will monitor the level and how high the dust is. But is there any guarantee that none of it will leak out into the neighboring residents?
Well, I think from a standpoint of the dust, what we've done is set extremely low alarm levels that are safe levels at very low numbers, okay? And that machine reads it, takes in the air and it reads it, and it tells us, oh, that's higher than our alarm level. Therefore, there's going to be an alarm that's done that's going to tell the construction firm, okay, we got a problem, we need to basically improve our dust control. But we will also be taking samples and sending them off to the laboratory. Now, we can't do that like real time, like these dust monitors, but in a few days later, we get the results. And then we can start looking at those results over time, and we have risk levels and things like that we look at to make sure that you on the Cook are safe.
Well, there's another question that concerns that. I mean, what about a shift in the wind?
Well, there's a meteorological station there, okay? So it's going to measure wind direction. So we're going to have one, like if this is the excavation where I'm at. There's going to be one upwind, okay? So we get the background of what's coming from elsewhere, so we know. And then there's going to be one downwind, and then two on the other sides of the excavation, okay? So we think we have it covered. Now, obviously, if we have to modify that, we will. And as I said previously, if there's two things happening on the site, like on one side of the site they're doing something that may be creating dust, versus another side, then we're going to have to bring more monitors on, and that's all part of the plan that we have to make sure that we've got this covered. I think, do not forget though, that I have full-time oversight on this project. There's going to be an EPA representative every day on that project, okay? That will ensure they're going to be looking at the street, okay? They're going to be looking at the air monitor. They're going to be there. Rachel was there during the actual demolition of the housing complex. Okay? There'll be other staff members there too from her team. But so that we think helps in terms of making sure that we're not influencing and putting any negative risk on not only the workers, because the workers are going to be in that, they'll be wearing certain air monitoring devices to look at health and safety standards, but also the community. Last thing we don't want to spread dust on the roads, and we do not want to basically influence the surrounding community and put them at risk. We can do this cleanup safely, if the right dust control is used, and we plan to do that.
Well, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Yep, thank you.
Good afternoon. All right, so my name is Abel Israel, and I have deep roots with East Chicago, especially Calumet. I got my first haircut here. My wife attended this very school. I met my wife 2 blocks away from here. Most of my family is from East Chicago. Most were Calumet residents. My mother was a city clerk and my uncle was a teacher. My family is generally part of this community. I currently work as a lead field scientist on the former DuPont property cleanup in East Chicago, working as an environmental technician for impact environmental. I never thought that I would be able to make a difference in my community. I am putting on public record that I was not aware, nor was my employer, of this remediation project having been nearly finalized in scope until last week. How is this possible? My employer, Impact Environmental, has always volunteered to help where it can to clean the USS Lead site by participating in efforts to reduce the cumulative impacts of the two remediation projects through agency coordination. How can it be that your efforts fail to notify me and my employer? My immediate concern as a community member and as an environmental professional is that the environmental impacts of this next phase of the USS Lead remediation has not considered the cumulative impacts of two remediation projects occurring simultaneously in the community, absent coordination. Cumulative impact analysis is required under public participation, particularly within environmental justice communities. President Biden's executive order on environmental justice especially demands promotion of the latest science, data, and research on cumulative impacts, and a deepening of the government's role and commitment to environmental justice. Where is this cumulative impact analysis here? Further, there are concerns regarding the quantity and quality of backfill materials to be used at the USS Lead site. Terms such as clean field, quote unquote, and industrial field, quote unquote, are inconsistent with the residential quality soil that was previously understood for use at the project. I will be submitting, along with my employer, further comments in writing to the parties in the coming weeks. I expect that all of these considerations will be heard as legally required under public comment policy in addition to the environmental justice enhancements provided by the President.
Well, thank you for your statement, and so we're ready for the next question and or statement. Please raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone. And oh, we got one more question from the back.
I want to ask something from Mr. Rodriguez. After this is done, will I have a time period we could comment on these comments? Is that possible? Because I think last time I asked you, you said you couldn't do it for me. Could you do it this time or no?
Yeah, Joe, so
Because you're being out a lot of information. If you can't take it in sitting here,
Exactly.
in my opinion.
yeah, so this is not there's no public comment period, there's no formal public comment period like other parts of the cleanup. You can always submit questions at any time. I know you would like to wait until you have the transcript of this meeting, so yeah, absolutely, when you have it, you can submit any questions, any concerns, and we'll respond to them.
And one more thing, I'll let you go.
So let me, before you go, yeah, so what you need, we'll get you a copy of the transcript when it's.
Yeah, I just want to be able to comment on it if I
Yes,
want to.
and then we'll
That's all.
respond to your.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing I want to ask, and that'll be it. I talked to Mr. Ackermo earlier about that timeline site on the NWI Times. There's a lot of information there about what happened before we got to this point of the cleanup. And I know I can't read it all, but I think you need a meeting to go through it. And these people have the right to know exactly what happened before we got to this point of the cleanup. The information's on the internet. All you have to do is read it, and you guys can tell us this is right, this is wrong. I think they need to know how we got to this point. There's a lot of, there's by a reporter, there's a lot of information on there. You're not, if I sit here for hours, you might be able to go through it. Ain't got that kind of time. But if you had another meeting and tell people to read it, you'll comment on it, I think that's a good idea, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I know you gave me that information, Joe, and I'll certainly take a look at that article back from 2016. I know you mentioned.
There's a lot on there.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it, and then you know, you can submit. I need to look at it because I.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I understand.